Welcome everyone to the 4th episode of Across the Decades. I'm joined by my very great, close, longtime friend, Malcolm Smith. Would you be able to do me the honors and flip the hourglass for Across the Decades?
Bang.
Let's get started. So, what better way to start than with a quick cheers?
Salud.
Salud. I really needed that.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, it's really crazy to think all the years that we've known each other, drinking a beer now, but when we met, definitely not drinking age.
We were like 5, 6?
What was that like? Yeah, so we were in soccer, right?
Yeah. And we were just like kind of vibing for a little bit, I feel.
Do you want to tell the story of the earthquakes and the beginnings of... Yeah, the John Smith family in basically, running the Bolingbrook Soccer Club and, being a prolific name, I would say.
Isn't that so funny? My dad has never played soccer, like, a day in his life, but, like, very much coached us, like, probably, like, 10, 12 years.
Very formative.
And now I'm looking back and I'm like, dang, that was, like, kind of cool, like, have your dad, like, be the coach. At the time, I was nothing but embarrassed. I was like, oh, my dad's the coach. Like, everyone's going to think I'm weird. Now I'm like, as an adult, I'm like, oh, that was a lot of time. Like, you had a full work day.
And he was taking...
You dealt with, like, crappy people at work. And then came to, like...
Ran a good team.
I know, a good team. And I was like, I was ungrateful. I'm sorry, Dad. Love you.
But, the pictures of us when we were young, I mean, these are some...
No, these are throwback
legendary pictures. Pictures with you, of course, Marcus. There's pictures, Creets, Avery, Lamar, Rachel Wank. Like, these are people that...
It was really like the set, like youth soccer and youth sports. I mean, I think like people I still talk to today.
Yeah.
Like all those people you just named, I'm like, I saw Rachel, like we hung out all this weekend.
Yeah.
And so that's...
In-house. Shout out to In-house.
Shout out to In-house because also like it was affordable. Like traveling soccer, was great, but that was expensive, and like just being able to come together and like play sports like as children and not like pay $1 million. I feel like that was very beneficial for like my development. I hope they're still doing that. I actually have no idea like what it's like nowadays.
Yeah, I would hope so. And I think, we started, how early is it? Because I think In-house, we were both referees.
We were referees. I was a narc. That's why my HR career started. I was like, I like rules.
And it paid well. Cash.
Cash.
We love that. I think it was $15 for the youngest league, going all the way
to... It went up to like 40.
Yeah.
For like the senior games.
Do you think that kept up with inflation?
Not at all. And I do think they probably were like, we shouldn't do cash anymore.
We were really balling after ref, especially on those days when we would ref like 2-3 games. We'd come out with like...
Being a 14-year-old with like $60.
Clean.
I was like, I can literally do anything. Like, steak and shake on me, y'all. Like, let's ride.
I remember telling Cokeith explicitly, I make too much money. I don't know what to do with it because I was working at Papa's and making the ref money.
Oh, so you were...
Yeah. I had so much money back in the day. What was I doing? I should have been buying property. Like, I was sleeping.
Bonds or stocks or
the
stock market. I don't know, something.
I was asleep. But, so I think that was... How old were we then?
That was the beginning. I'm going to say 6. I'm going to say 6 because that's like first grade, like right when kind of like, I think the leagues like opened up. And I remember like, we were like beginning.
Yeah.
Like OG.
Wow. Yeah, so long ago. And I think, the transition, I think, from just knowing each other on soccer really changed when we both went to Brooks.
It was middle school where we were like, oh, I think we're friends.
Yeah.
Like, before I was like, oh, like, he's on my team. I'm like 7 years old. I'm just hanging out. I'm just kidding. I'm living life. But then middle school, we were like, we're friends.
Yeah, this is a
friendship. Like, we're going to tap in.
And did you only play soccer in middle school?
I played basketball.
Okay, I was
very poorly.
What was that like? What was your hoop dreams era?
I did not have hoop dreams, but like, Marcus and I were like large early, so like our parents friends, they look at our size and frame and they're like, they need to be like in the paint. And we were like, I like playing soccer. And they were like, you should play basketball or football. Because my dad played football like growing up.
What did he play?
Oh, one of those like pushing positions. I don't know American football.
Well, there we go.
Something that pushed people.
The football knowledge is being exposed.
I was like, ugh, one of those. Even though I was in marching band like around football for 6 years, but I was just there for the vibes.
It's like the common trope of when a football coach sees just like a big like kid or student.
And we
like,
were big.
how much do you weigh? I need to get you on the football team. Have you ever thought about playing football?
Dead ass. Those were interactions we both had. And it wasn't like we were avoiding it. We weren't like, oh, I'd rather do anything other than, football or basketball. It's just like, I like playing soccer.
I guess what was the beginning of soccer? Like, why soccer?
Jackie, my older sister, played soccer too. And I have no idea how that started. I think they were probably just looking at the Park District pamphlet like, well, she's got to do something. And somehow soccer came out on top. And then, she's like 4 years older, depending on the time. And then, she didn't. So I was like, oh, well, boys will do it too.
Yeah. It was an easy transition, probably.
And then I was like, oh, I like this. And kind of doubled down and played it all the way through.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it makes sense, especially with the soccer mom trope. If
you have all the gear,
If she's already going to soccer games, why not just say like, okay, the boys are going to do that too.
But yeah, my basketball era was very short-lived. But we were called the Twin Towers. And that was,
You guys had
it could have been a moment. It could have been a moment for me and Marcus's basketball career.
No, and I think it was a moment on soccer, like just from a purely developmental standpoint. You guys, right. I mean, Marcus obviously playing the goalkeeper, and then you playing defense. Like
there was an intimidation.
There was an intimidation factor, and there was also, of course, the name of the Earthquakes, which I think your dad basically took for like a decade, even because he coached even after you guys were gone, right?
He did. He really did stay involved with the program. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that name did stick. The Earthquakes.
Yeah,
and we were low-key good.
we might need to bring the Twin Towers back, but
yeah, I'm like IDK, like what the current climate is,
Yeah,
At the time, the nickname ate. At the time.
Yeah. No, you guys definitely had respect. We'll say that.
Yeah. Real respect on the soccer field.
So yeah, we transitioned from playing on the Earthquakes to then getting to know each other in middle school. Probably, I don't remember there being like any exact moment, but probably just by the nature of being in honors. And band. You played the trombone. I played the flute. I guess Marcus was probably in the same classroom I was in, right? Because 6th grade, 7th grade were split between brass and wind instruments.
Oh yeah, they did split them up to learn the
with Mr. and Mrs. Finn, yeah. But if I recall, they were split. But then he ended up playing the baritone. You ended up just sticking with the trombone. But then ultimately ended up working your way into being a drum major, which was a little bit different.
I know. It was had a little leadership position in high school. Oh God.
What was that? Yeah, I guess you did that just senior year, or did you do that junior year too?
Junior and senior year.
Oh, you did it both years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what was that like?
I didn't like playing the trombone that much, but I really liked the concept of band. So I was like, well, what are those people doing up there? They're waving their arms and they get a cuter little uniform because you got a different hat and you got the little gloves. So my motivations for being a drum major were it wasn't something I always wanted as a 6-year-old child. But I was I like band, but I'm not the best at the trombone. So what are they doing? And then it turned out to be a lot of fun. I think it was beneficial, for my brain development. I'm all right, I'm kind of in a leadership role. I should set a good example, discipline, that type of thing. I'm asking people to stand still for hours on end. I'm I guess I should be standing still too, So
probably threw that in your college application.
I was.
You're typing away.
Let me tell you about a leadership position I've had.
And then what was the, I guess, impetus for your desire or interest in music? Did you always have an interest in music, or I guess stepping into band? Why band?
Yeah, I remember they came to the school, and they were had all the instruments out, and I was just kind of oh, that's cool. You
were just
I tried the trombone. I remember I tried the trumpet and the French horn, but those little tiny mouthpieces, I was I can't make a sound out of this. So trombone, it is.
That was the opposite for me.
You know what I really liked? And this is something I've found out as I've had sit-downs with myself, in later life. I liked competition. And I liked competitive nature, and that's why I really liked marching band and being in a competitive marching band. We weren't that good, but the concept of Like, all right, we're going to learn the show, and we're going to learn it, like, down to the nitty-gritty details, and, like, let's go out there and win. I was like, I like competition. Because when I did marching band in college, too. And it just, like, didn't feel the same. Like, of course, it was like, it's fun. It's college marching band. It's a vibe. It's lit. But I was like, we're not, like, competing for anything. Like, we're putting on the show. We're putting on entertainment. And, like, though that was, like, obviously fun, I was like, I think I like competition. And so I did it for 2 years in college, and I was like, at the time, I was just like, I don't think I like this anymore. And now I'm, like, looking back, I'm like, oh, I didn't like it as much because we weren't competing.
What was the competitive difference, or I guess, what was it about high school that was competitive that didn't translate to college?
Like the competitions, like the marching band competitions that we would go to.
So in college, it was just purely...
It's entertainment. It's entertainment, it's vibes, and I was like, oh, this is, like, fun, but I want to win something. I want a trophy.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, do I have issues with achievement? But that's, like, for later. That's the later segment.
Yeah, it's just the male instinct to just assert and just be like, I'm going to win.
And be like, I want to win. I want to, like, be the best. And I think that was, like, a part of myself I, like, didn't fully, like, tap into. Like, even, like, playing soccer, like, I wasn't, like, the most competitive person on the team. At least, like, outwardly, but, like, inside, I was like...
I don't know. You did have a lot of passion, especially in the early days of travel soccer. There were, I could get a little hot-headed, a little heated. There were moments where you would get yellow cards. I think you probably...
I like the card.
You probably got like one or two red cards here or there.
One or two.
Yeah.
Actually, I was a little bit of a hothead. I was like, oh, and it's, if someone like would push like, Marcus, like after he made the save, it's like,
well, that's like
I'm going to get you on the next play.
That's a compounded factor, too, because...
Now you're messing with my brother, and we have a problem.
Yeah, not only is he your brother, he's the goalie. And, like, in every sport, goalies...
They're protected, right?
Yeah, they get protected, they have respect. Like, you never mess with a goalie. But then when the...
There were some, like, tribal instincts, coming into play, and I was like, I don't like that.
And you were center D.
Like, we're going to make sure this is handled and addressed.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, the competitive nature is probably something that... I think nowadays is pretty interesting to talk about. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you're an adult. I'm not like competing for like a lot in my adult life. I mean, like I'm kind of past the mindset of like I'm gonna compete and like climb the corporate ladder and like outperform everyone. I'm kind of like I want to like do the right thing, like help work, and then like go home,
So what are your thoughts on participation trophies?
Participation trophies. I have a lot of them. Because my parents like to keep things, which is like beautiful. But I was at home and I like opened like up this door in the basement, which like was supposed to be a guest bedroom, and it was just like filled with like stuff. And I was like, we gotta go through this. Like, Mom, like just come down here. Like we're gonna spend an hour and a half. We're just gonna go through like as much as we can. And a lot of the stuff that we like came across were like participation trophies from like youth soccer, and I was like, I think that was important to like receive at the time, like you're developing, like you're understanding, like collaborating and like working in a team setting. And like, if you're like not a jerk, like I feel like it is nice to like recognize that like with children and be like, hey, like you did this thing, like maybe you didn't win the league, but like you as a child worked with other children and like worked towards a common goal, and like, let's celebrate that. Like here's a participation trophy. No buts, and, some people might over-index on that participation trophy and, like, what it means, and then, like, they kind of, like, expect that in, like, later life and adult life, and, like, there's no participation trophies in adult life. Like, I pay my bills, and, like, no one's like, oh, my God, like, you paid your utility bill. It's just, like, you should do that. So you could look at it for children like, oh, well, you should work with other kids, this is something just like you should be doing. But I feel like, at least like in my lived experience, like I appreciate it, and I think it was important for me as a kid, but I was also able to like become an adult and realize, that was important when we were children, and now I'm an adult, and this is like, the playing field's a little different. So I'm for them. I think there's a place for them in like developing children.
Yeah, I agree. I think that not everything has to be so black and white, and especially with children as you're transitioning.
Like I want to like reinforce, positive things. Like,
yeah, and maybe a good balance. Of course, this is just me thinking out loud here. Is also a separation between yes, there's a participation trophy effect, but also on top of that, we're going to recognize maybe the top goal scorer, or we're going to recognize
MVP,
like MVP or best save, because especially when you're in-house, there's a lot of rotation of positions. So it's not like, commonly in soccer, the rewards will almost always go to the offense. But in-house, because everyone's rotating, there's probably a good opportunity to balance that out.
To get something else, right?
Yeah. And say, this was most improved, this was, best save, or this was best goal. And that's where you're able to maybe balance the participation trophy while also recognizing
with like it's some achievement
that some people did step up and do a little bit better versus, that one kid that was just like standing and like playing with the flowers.
Yeah, just like, oh, look at this.
Yeah, exactly. Or like,
get up, we got a game to win.
Yeah, or just like talking with their parents on the sideline. There's different stages. I mean, I was one of those kids early on where I would just like pick the little dandelions and play with them instead of actually focus on the game. But
put your head in the game.
Some kids are like, they are totally activated from the moment they step foot on the field for the first time.
Yeah.
Like you definitely notice it when you're, especially as referees for the youngest kids, like there are some who are just running circles around others, and then there's others that are just totally disconnected and just have no, like, they're like, I don't even recognize that I'm in a game.
They're like, what's happening? Like, where am I?
The bumblebee soccer is in some ways true because you have like those kids congregating, but then you have like the one or two kids that are just like
running circles.
This
is drills.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's interesting. And
there's a place for it. That's like my final answer. There's a place for it in like youth sports.
Yeah, and it's true that competition can be good, but it can also be taken too far. There is good aspects of competition because you do like push to, better yourself, but it can also, like we were just talking about, lead to hot-headed moments when you maybe also unjustly judge either yourself or someone else. So I think to your point, it does need to be taken into balance. But I guess as we're talking about advancing and pushing pushing yourself further along, as you transition from high school into college, what was it like? I know especially for you and Marcus being twins, making that decision to either separate, or did you guys apply to the same school? Did you intend to separate or not be in the same? Like, what was that like?
We were pretty, I wouldn't say adamant, but we were like, we should like go to separate schools. But there was overlap in our applications, because like obviously in-state versus out-of-state is like a big price difference. So like we did apply to a lot of the in-state schools, and he applied to Iowa. I don't really remember why.
Did you?
I did not apply to Iowa. I only applied to in-state and Mizzou. I was like, I want to be like far enough from like my family where they can't like just like drop by, but also like I don't want to have to like get on a plane to like come home from college. So yeah, I was like in-state, and then like Mizzou, just because like I knew people that went to Mizzou, so I was like, oh, that could be fun.
So no Wisconsin or Indiana schools either?
I was like, I'm gonna do my one out-of-state school that like is a bit more in budget. Oh, I did apply to Michigan, but they were like nothing. So I was like, okay,
they're like, nice try.
Well, that's because when I was applying either undeclared or for physical therapy, like pre-physical therapy.
Really? I didn't know that you were going in.
Yeah, that was like that's like what I was like writing on like all my applications, and talking about like my experience with like sports and how I want to like continue to work with athletes on the other side. Like, oh, my essays like kind of ate. And then I ended up, going to U of I, and then like stepped into like MCB and was like, I don't think I like science that much. And then part of me was like, oh, like I can like get through these like science requirements. And I was like, I don't think I like it enough to like study it.
Did you take anatomy in high school?
Oh, I loved anatomy.
So you
like
did
that rat, I was like yeah, let's like get into it.
Yeah.
I loved anatomy. But like chemistry and like biology. I think also there was a little bit of like, is it imposter syndrome? But I was kind of like, oh, am I like smart enough to like do these like really advanced sciences? I kind of like doubted myself a little bit. And I was like, oh, like, I don't know if I can do this, and I don't know if I'm like there enough to be like, oh, let's just like push everything aside and let's just like get through it. I was like, I want to do this. I want to study this field, but I'm also not like completely 10 toes down. And then you mix that with a little bit of imposter syndrome, and I was kind of like, okay, we're gonna like shift career paths.
Why do you think that imposter syndrome?
I don't know. Like I got great grades in high school. Like was in like the honors and AP.
Just something.
I got an A in biology, but I was like not. I don't know. There was just something that was like, I don't know if I can like do this like technical type of work.
What about
now I'm looking back, I'm like, I could have like totally done that if I like believed in myself a little bit more.
What about the social circle in college? I know that different majors will have different like groups. Was that maybe a factor too?
I mean, I made my decision quick. It was like literally within like 2 weeks of.
Oh, really?
Being at U of I. Okay. Yeah, literally 2 weeks. Like went to that first MCB lecture, and I was like, I'm gonna go into the undeclared studies and like
figure it out.
Try again. So it was a pretty quick. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, okay, was I like trusting my gut in that instinct, or did I just like kind of like pull out too quickly and like not give myself a chance to like try? And who knows? We'll never know, because I will not be 18 at U of I again. But it is like, that is something where I kind of like remember that like, oh, you've had moments in your life where you've doubted yourself, and if you ask me, you're like, why? And I'm like, I don't know. I just did.
Yeah.
And then like when you kind of sometimes even break it down like that, and you just ask like simple questions, you're like, why am I doubting myself, or why am I having like, these thoughts? And that's part of growing, and then you can remember to make things simple, like just like later in life. Like if I'm ever like doubting myself, or, feeling not confident, just like breaking it down, like, why do I feel this way? If I don't have an answer, like just try it, like experience your life. If you try it and you fail, like whatever, it's fine.
How big of that is there in terms of communication with others, whether it's with your brother or family? Like when you were making this decision, did you reach out to others and talk it through, or did you just feel
it was a unilateral decision? I made it like myself. I did not consult anyone, which is like, I love to gab. I like to talk about myself. That's why you might be on the podcast. I was like, absolutely. But in that moment, I was just like, I'm making this decision.
Wow.
A little uncharacteristic of me, because I like to talk to the girlies, about my team.
Let them know. But it's also good to get input and just see like, check me here. Am I making a rash decision? But it seemed like in this case, you were just so...
I took myself out of the game. I was like, I'm removing myself from this. And so I'm like, wow, that's like two like kind of, I don't want to say out of character, because I still have moments of self-doubt now, but like there's self-doubt mixed in with like no consultation on like, like a pretty major life decision. And I'm like, that was a choice, Malcolm. That was a choice that you made, and no regrets now. I like the work I do now, but I was
gonna say, looking back, do you think that, is there any regrets?
I think I found I definitely, I grew up like playing athletics, and like now I've like found a way to like get back into it now. Like, like we're playing tennis, like on like a rec volleyball team. We even played a couple soccer games like over the winter. I'm starting to like be like, oh, like this was something I liked. Like I should like do it, if it's something that I like and makes me feel good, and like it's not like hurting anyone, like you should do it. And so I've kind of like, that's like very recent though, like the last like year and a half, like I started getting back into it. But there was like that 22 to 27-year-old period where like I was like not involved in like any sort of like athletics. And I think I felt it. I didn't know it at the time, but I was like, oh, I kind of want to like play some sports with people. And those were my prime physical years. But I'm feeling great in the body right now.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I'm moving, I'm grooving, so it's all fine. There's not a defined timeline for things.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, looking back, you, as we mentioned, you played basketball, soccer, you ran track, you played volleyball. Yeah.
I forgot about that. I was not good, but I was like, oh, everyone else is doing it. Let's run.
What was your experience, I guess, one, in just trying all these different sports? And do you think that that's probably why you ended up saying, okay, maybe this is something that I'm ultimately interested in and pursuing as a career?
Yeah. I've always been a like try a lot of things person. Like I played a lot of sports, like in band and choir, like I played like different instruments, like I sang different parts. I've always liked to do a lot of different things. And so on one hand, it's like, oh great, like you can do a little bit of everything. But then, sometimes I'm like, dang, what if I just like picked that one thing and just like lasered in. But you know, I've kind of like, that's just not how I've approached life, and that's not how I approach hobbies. I kind of just like want to try stuff. And now I'm getting better, like, you know, with age, we're saying like, okay, I think I'm like done with that, you know, or I'm going to try something new now. And that's just how I've rolled. I think there was a moment in time where I was like, damn it, Malcolm, you should have like locked in and focused on something. But it's like, no, that's not how I do things. I like to try a lot of different things.
Yeah, and I think variety is the spice of life.
Variety is the spice of life.
Yeah, and there's something nice about just enjoying your leisure and hobbies.
Enjoying your leisure, like we're not going to the league, you know, like
yeah, why not try out different sports, hang out with different groups of people? Of course, you know, there's going to be the athletes, the marching band, the A-wingers, right? The marching band choir group, and then ultimately the different experiences that you get there. But that's, you know, that also is good just from like a social group standpoint, and just dipping your toes in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, exactly. I've been like that with people too, and like friends and colleagues and peers, like anyone, you know, I like come across. It's like I never was the type of person that like had like the same like group of friends that were like super super close, but we were like all like that was it, you know. And sometimes I would get like resentful and like kind of jealous. I'm like, oh, like these people, like they're like the four amigos and like they do everything, and I'd be like, oh, that makes me kind of sad. But then, you know, now I look at, you know, my life and like all the things I'm like doing like with different people. You know, like I have people I play tennis with, people I play volleyball with. Like I started guitar lessons. I did an open mic like for the first time in probably like 7 years.
Wow.
Like last week. So now like, you know, starting to dip into like, you know, like back into the arts and music scene. And I like that. I like hanging out with different people with different interests, and I find that exciting. But there always will be a part of me that's like, oh, it would have been nice to do something like 4 people, like in the movies, you know? But like, it's the movies, like whatever, like live your life.
Yeah, like the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, where they like the different steps.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, I wish I had that. But I'm like, it's live your life.
Yeah, in a way you do though, right? With Marcus, like you do have that steady rock of someone that you know that, of course, is always going to be there for you no matter what, but also just gets you just by the very nature of being your twin.
I talk to him like 3 times a day. I mean, now that he's like, you know, working his new job, I, you know, talk to him maybe like once a day, and I'm like, oh, like I have so much to tell you. Would I tell people that? And they're like, that's the cutest thing ever. You talk to your twin like so many times. I'm like, you guys don't talk to your siblings? But you know, everyone's relationships with their siblings is different. And like I was literally on the phone with my sister, like on the way here.
Oh, nice.
Like we talking. Yeah. And I'm really grateful for that, because I know that's like not always the situation.
Oh yeah.
But we gab.
Family dynamics, yeah, they're different for everyone. But would you say that you are talking with, let's say, Marcus, right, less than you did when you first went off to college? Like, was there a little bit of that break where
there was
like,
a little break?
Okay. What was that like?
Well, because like we both did marching band at our separate colleges. So like we were busy. We were like, you know, doing marching band and trying to like find our place in the world, you know, like on a college campus. And so like we definitely talked, but we weren't. We were enjoying the break, you know, the separation. But now I do think that we're closer now, like probably because we kind of branched off a little bit and like their own things, and like, you know, made our own friends, and just like got confidence in ourselves that like, hey, like I am like my own, you know, like unique individual. Like in the context of like being a twin, that's like low-key bestie. But I think we did need that time just to like probably mostly like prove to ourselves, you know, that like I can like step into the world and be like myself without necessarily being like, oh, like the boys, you know, the twins. Like we would resent that like towards like the end of our time in high school. It was kind of like, okay, I'm ready to like be my own person. And then we did for 4 years, and I was like, Mark, I miss you. Come back.
Yeah, come back. Yeah. And then also get the opportunity to live in your own room, or sleep in your own, not be in a bunk bed.
Yeah, and now I'm like literally like every time it comes to Chicago and we have a slumber party, I'm just like, let's hang out, let's watch music videos, like let's do all these things. So it makes those moments like definitely more special. Now that, you know, of course, like we're older, we live in different states, we don't do it all the time. It makes them like more special when we do have them.
And then, of course, as you mentioned, you went to U of I, Marcus went to Iowa. You ended up then moving to San Francisco.
I did. I was like, I'm moving to California. I'm never coming back. Everyone, see you later.
Why? And what was it that took you there?
So I did, like I got an offer like with Amazon, like after graduation. And so, like growing up, just like, like it was pretty expected that like I would go to college and finish college. Like it was a really big accomplishment, but kind of like, the way my parents raised me, which like I'm definitely grateful for. I was like, this is like what you're going to do. So I was like, oh, okay. Like I like, following expectations. I like following expectations.
I love rules.
I love rules. So I was like, yeah, all right, let's do it. And then so, like getting that job at Amazon, just like a big company and like, what a lot of people would deem like, like, oh, like you like made it, like you're like successful, like you went to college, finished college and like got this job like in a new state with like this large company. Like on paper, you are like, oh, like you did it, Joe. It's like, okay. And so that was like a really good feeling to have. I was like, wow, like, like I'm making like my family proud, like my parents proud. That like feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also, Amazon just randomly placed me in California though. I didn't like choose it. It was kind of like one of those jobs where they say, hey, like you got the job. We're going to tell you where you're going to be living like 30 days before you start.
Wow.
I was like 22. I was like, I literally have nowhere to be. I have no furniture, no car. Like you tell me where to be, send me that relocation stipend and like I'm there.
Wow.
Like that was like my mindset. I was like, damn, it's kind of a little girl boss over there. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get into it.
But also they controlled in a way. They set
looking
like,
back, I'm like, wow, if I had like a child or like obligations for like sick family members, like that would not have worked, you know? And so like there is a bit of like, well, you kind of like do need to like be like in a position of privilege to like even be able to accept these types of opportunities. Because like what if I, was like, I had a little sibling and like I had to raise them because my parents were at work all the time. I can't just jet off to a different state. And so sometimes I think about that and it makes me like, it's like, damn, like I'm so grateful I had the opportunity, but I'm like, I was only able to have the opportunity because like I was in a position to accept it. Like a lot of people who are totally capable of taking the opportunity like that, like they physically can't. They're not in a position to do it. And so that's like a real thing. And, when I was working at Amazon, it was a blue collar job. Like, yes, it's like Amazon. People are like, tech, oh my God. Like I was in the warehouse. Like it was a blue collar role, like in a manufacturing facility. And, like a lot of the employees that like I was supporting, I could just like talk with them, like listen to their stories. And I was like, yeah, this is like real life. And we're like not paying you a ton. Like that was like my first, not my first, like, cause I was like 22 years old, but that was a really like pivotal moment where like I started to understand like there are a few people in power and then there are like the majority of people who like when you look at the numbers you're like shouldn't they be like running things like if one of them leaves like we're screwed, like if a manager leaves like find another one
yeah.
And that was like kind of like my first, not first, I keep on saying first, but that was like a really important moment for me, just like interact with class a little bit, It's like here I am, like, like this upper middle class guy, like from out of state, supporting like the local people of San Francisco and San Jose who are like living in this high ass cost of living area, making like $17 an hour. I'm like, how are you supposed to pay your rent with that? And like feed your children, like put them through college. I was like, it was really eye-opening, experience.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point that while things might appear or present to us multiple times, sometimes you just need to be in the right state of mind or it just needs to be presented to you in the right form or fashion to where it really clicks and you're like,
it clicks. Because of course, you learn about like class and like, stuff and like APUS and stuff, but then you see it. You're like, there are like 500 workers and like 20 managers.
The white collar.
Yeah.
Especially higher, as you get higher up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, that's, like those 500 workers should like be controlling more of the decisions. It's not. It's 20 managers.
Yeah.
And that's, a reflection of, a lot of functions, systems, institutions, like whatever you want to call them. And I was like, oh, I'm looking that concept in the eye right now. And I also had a little bit of, I don't, imposter syndrome might not be the right word, but, I'm telling people on the phone, like my parents are telling their friends, like, oh, like my son's working at Amazon. And like everyone probably had this idea that I was in like the Seattle office, like in the Spheres, like getting a free like kombucha. I didn't know how you say it. I don't even know. Just like kind of living this like, like kind of soft girl life. And I was working noon to 11 p.m. and I would have to work every other Saturday. Wow. So I was like working like a swing shift kind of. 5-6 days a week. Like
it was a hustle.
I was hustling, and I was like, dang, like I was like, I would like talk to, some of my friends and they were like working, more like white collar jobs. And I was like, this was before I kind of like gone through my realization of like, we should talk about like class more. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm working, I'm not working the type of job some of my friends from college are working. They're in these big fancy high rise buildings, in Chicago. And like I'm in a warehouse in California, like, oh my God. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, why was I thinking like that? Like I was in a really good position to like impact people's lives positively. And like I was able to, because it was like a human resources job. And, sometimes people just need you to hear them out. Other times you have to tell a manager, like, you gotta get your like life together. Like you can make a difference. Like obviously you're still operating within the system. So, there was a little bit of like naivety in me, like I'm gonna go into like HR and like I'm gonna just like topple the whole system, like you're still operating within it. And that's, something that, I'm even thinking about now. I'm like, all right, like I'm working this job, like I'm operating within the system. Like, do I want to keep doing this or like, do I have like entrepreneurial like things? Like, do I want to like break away from like, working for a company, for an organization, like for a CEO? Because when you do like kind of sit back and think about it, I'm like, dang, I wonder if I could be like doing more, So that's kind of like phase 2.0, like in the next like probably 3 to 5 years, like how I want to spend my time and, feel like I'm making an impact. Because I've had the, making an impact like within the system, and now I'm like, do I want to keep doing that, or do I think there's more that I could be doing?
Yeah, and I do commend you for having that realization, because I think sometimes looking in the mirror and recognizing that inequality can cause a lot of dissonance for people, and they can either like grip or like hold on to that and say, no, that's not me, and like I am a good person.
I'm not one of those guys.
Exactly.
Like I'm very much one of those guys. I'm like in the 20 people I was talking about, like I'm in that group.
Yeah.
Like I'm very much one of those guys, you know?
And I do think that on the other side, like there is some, like there can be the opportunity of maybe not necessarily resent, but feeling bad of saying like, why am I in this position? But ultimately, like privilege, to your point, like that is something that, especially in different family circumstances, income, opportunities that are presented, like those are all going to vary. But I think your parents worked really hard to get you in a position so that you could get this opportunity and like,
take it.
Yeah, and take it. And I think ultimately, like that's what we all want, right? For our friends, for if we have families, that ultimately we build and cultivate a life where they have privilege and that they can ultimately capitalize on those opportunities, because we want them to have a better life than we did, right? Like that's kind of
like everyone wants the best, like for their children.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
No one's gonna say, "Oh, I want like the hardest road possible."
It's like, oh, I actually want to be poor and have no opportunities. And like, no,
everybody wants the best
Yeah.
for their children.
Yeah.
So, like I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, it is a balance of saying, well, we do want a better life for those that come after us, and that's ultimately like where the privilege comes in. But what's really important is not to say like there shouldn't be any better opportunities for those that aren't me.
Right.
It should actually be, how can we leverage the privilege that we're in to better facilitate a flourishing life for others? And I think that's what's really beautiful about what you just said, where you're saying, okay, I'm in this position, and even though I'm working within a system, systems are made up of people, and I'm part of those people, and
I'm like a person.
I can do good things, and ultimately I'm not going. It's like changing the direction of the Titanic as it's approaching an iceberg. Like, sure, you're just one rudder, and you're not going to change the whole direction of the boat, but you are changing it a little bit, right? And hopefully you changing it a little bit helps others change it a little bit, and then through your example, and ultimately it is a huge system, and Amazon is the largest corporation maybe in the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, it has a ton of influence and all these things, but again, the people within San Jose, which is where you said you were working, they don't care about maybe the Amazon office that's in Alabama or the one in New York or the one in Texas, right? They care about that particular office, and you're in that particular office, so their experience with Amazon is ultimately through you. So if you can do the right thing and be generous and help them out, then ultimately, that's all that you can ask for, right?
Right. They're not like they're not worried about like the conglomerate. They're like, this is where I show up to work every day. And I'm like, I show up to work every day here too. So like, how can we like make this better?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I do like about, like some of the work I do. It's like just the way, things are set up, like work is like how you sustain your life. And so like, being in HR is helping people navigate through work, which then like in turn like helps them navigate like through life, because that's how they control, their income and like,
Mm-hmm.
what they're able to do. So I like that. I don't know if it's like a forever thing, because I'm trying to keep my like mind flexible. But I do like it.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that aspect of, again, making the biggest impact within the sphere of influence that you have. And it's never going to be perfect, but ultimately you do have that influence there. So
Mhm.
yeah, make the most of it. And you ultimately, like you said, play a big role in people's careers through, HR and, that's of course how people get their income and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the incentives, unfortunately, through capitalism are going to be reap the most profit and disincentivize communications between people. But that's where you can provide like the human element, right? Like ultimately that's what we want is relationship with others and get to know them and, watch out for each other's backs. But I know that from a corporation standpoint, they're like,
Money, 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 money.
exactly. So what can we do to just provide that human element that so many of us are just craving, right?
Oh my God, everyone's like, we're all like just craving like community, like and friendship and just like casual relationships. We really lost casual relationships, like during COVID. Like the people, you would see like on like your walks or like in the gym or like in the office, like, oh, like I see you, I never talked to you. Like we lost like casual relationships. And obviously, now like COVID like is very much not over, but a lot of our elected officials were like, well, we're gonna try. So like get out there and spend your money. And like, we're kind of back outside, essentially. But yeah, that was really difficult. And that was ultimately like a pretty big factor in like why I like moved back to Chicago. Like my mindset when I moved out to California was like, let's grind, let's get it. I'm
never coming back.
Never coming back. Like I am breaking from the mold of like Illinois and like, like I said, like, I like following expectations. Like I always like kind of followed the path laid out in front of me, which like so grateful there was a path laid out in front of me because like
we need direction.
Any direction, like tell me what to do, tell me where to go, and I'll go,
Yeah.
But that was like my like, okay, this is like I'm gonna be a little different here and like break off and like really embrace this move to California and never come back. And like I made some really good friends out there. Like I still keep in touch with a lot of them. Like I went to one of their weddings like a few months ago in October. And so like I'm happy that like I had that experience for me. But like COVID hit, I like grinded it out for a year, like all of 2020. And then I was just kind of like, I feel like I'm like, okay, like why am I out here? Like I was out here to like work this job and like get experience, and like have like just experience a new life. And like that's becoming really difficult to do like during COVID. And so I was like, I could be stubborn, and be like, I'm gonna fight this feeling and be like, no, like if you move home, that's a sign of weakness and just like fight it, stay out there and like grind it out. I was like, I could fight it and just like grind it out. But I was like, I think like I want to be near like my family, and like more people like that I grew up with, like friends, like yourself, and just like COVID was hard. I think I tried to gaslight myself into thinking that there wasn't a world altering event and that if I, have a reaction to it, that makes me weak. If I have a reaction to COVID, like turning everything upside down, like that makes me like not a strong person. Like I felt like that for a little bit.
Why do you think you got that sentiment?
Because we love individualism in the United States. And I was like, I'm an individual. Like, and I have my individual life in California and like moving back home and like, like I would move in with my parents because like I have an apartment, like in Chicago, like moving in, I'm like, oh, like, is that me not embracing like my individualism? Now I'm like, no, like you want to be by your family and your friends. Like, and a lot of my friends in California moved back too because, as I mentioned, like I was in the warehouse during COVID. Like I was in the warehouse, like t-shirt, mask, like before masks came out. Like it was a hot mess. But a lot of my friends, like even roommates who I became good friends with, they were working work from home jobs. So like, 2 or 3 months go by of COVID. They're like, oh, this isn't getting any better. Like, I'm moving back to Ohio, or like I'm gonna move back to Texas, or I'm gonna move back to, like, there's a lot of transplants in San Francisco. And so a lot of my friends kind of essentially moved back home within like 3 to 4 months of COVID. I like grinded it out the longest. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, what am I trying to prove? Am I trying to prove something to myself? Am I trying to prove something to others?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, there were no good answers to that question of, like, what I'm trying to prove. And I'm like, you just, like, follow the feeling. Like, I want to be closer to friends and family, like, after this, like, really difficult, like, COVID time. And, like, I need to, like, follow that. And I'm really happy I did. And I don't feel like I, sacrificed my life by, like, wanting to be close to my family and friends. Like, that was a weird thing of me to think. But now I'm looking back, I'm like, no, I was, like, 24. I wanted to prove to the world that, like, I could do it on my own, but, like, you can do it with other people. It's more fun that way.
Yeah. The mass exodus of California is, of course, well known, especially during the...
No, the girls were leaving. Like, I want to tell you, I was in I had 10 roommates in the house.
10?
I had 10 roommates. And when I left, there were 3, and they were actually about to, like, kick us out of that house because they were like, we're not making any money. Because, like, everyone would leave, and, like, no one was moving in. So, like, but when it was, like, 3 of us in the 10-bedroom house, I was like, this is my mansion. Like, welcome to my crib.
Yeah, it's like Flavor Flav.
And then they were like, y'all actually need to get out of here because we're not making any money. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go back to Chicago. Yeah. Like, I'm gonna get out of here.
Yeah, I think California is really, like, the climax of that American spirit, of the great American dream, where what really happened when America was finding its identity was exploration, right? You had people coming from Europe.
Let's dig for that gold. Let's go.
Yeah, people were coming from Europe for a new life, and then they came here, and then, of course, they kept it pushing westward until they reached California, and then the gold rush. And what America was known for was conquest, exploring new land. And then you reached a point where, hey, we reached the Pacific Ocean. So what the whole identity of America was this: build your own path, explore things, find things out that no one's ever seen before. Well, Europeans have never seen before. And then what ends up happening is, well, we can't expand west anymore. We can expand up. And that's where skyscrapers, the urbanization of cities, you got, like, the moguls of, like, the Rockefellers, and, of course, like, the tech billionaires.
Yeah, like, we gotta go up.
Yeah, and ultimately, that's what America, the spirit of America really is this radical individualism, to the point of even self-sacrifice, of, like, my own happiness. Like, we know that we're happiest when we're with family, with friends, right? Our parents, our siblings, right. Children, on Christmas and Thanksgiving. Like, we love those days. We love community. But then when it comes to what the world tells you,
leave them behind and go dig that goal. Like, let's go. Exactly. Like, and those pressures, like, I felt them. Yeah. Like, I very much felt like those pressures on me, like, during that time. It was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be out here, like, conquering this new life.
It's like, isn't that?
And I'm like, Malcolm, like, it's COVID. Like, no one can go outside. If you want to go to the park and hang out, you have to sit within, like, this little circle with the people you came with. I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah, it's like, isn't that what Bezos would want us to think? That we should be out here slaving away and working ridiculous hours, so that we're
not seeing your family because, like, I need to be, like, working and, like, conquering this and up. Like, no, like, go enjoy your family, like, enjoy your friends, keep up with the friends you have from California. Like, I'm going back, like, for Abby's wedding in July, and so it's like, there's still, like, parts of me out there, but, like, Chicago's always home.
Yeah. Yeah, you have your roots, and of course, the friends and family that you have here. And what I think a lot of people are really feeling nowadays is that they're unmoored. They don't feel grounded. They feel detached from everything, and they're kind of like floating in space. And a lot of that just comes from what you were saying, is this radical individualism. I don't need anyone.
I don't need no man. Exactly. I don't need nobody.
Exactly. I can just be myself. I can carve my own path. I can be successful. But it's like, is that really what brings human happiness? Like, no. You're not going to be on your deathbed and be like, look at all these hours that I worked and all these accolades that I have of promotions, and I've reduced this operational process by this expense and increased operational efficiency. Like, nobody cares about that, right? Everybody cares about the memories and the laughs and the relationships and being there when people are suffering. And of course, employers want us to think, just go to where the job, like Amazon, right? They say, just go to California. Like, that's where we need you. Okay, I'm just going to leave my family behind. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think twice. I was like, I'm out. See y'all later. And that's just so interesting to think about, like how much those like pressures like weighed on me. And now, like I love being here. It's like such a good balance of like, like my family's close, like there's friends I know, but there's also like I've never lived in Chicago, like I lived in Bolingbrook and lived in Champaign-Urbana. Like I've never lived here. So there's still stuff to explore. Like there's like plenty of new people to meet. Like it's a really good balance. Like I'm really enjoying it.
And just reconnecting, right? I do also want to say, and that's not like saying that you should never either travel or pick up and move somewhere else. It's just, don't also idolize it or like overly glamorize it.
Like I would relocate again.
Yeah, as long as that there's that recognition of, okay, there are cons with it. I think nowadays people are really enamored with this idea of like picking up and moving to a new state and starting fresh.
It will not fix all your problems. It won't. You need to do that work up here, girls.
Yes.
Okay, please.
Yeah.
Because it won't do it single-handedly. It could be an and, like I'm going to like approach life differently and do that in a new location. Perfect. But if you just say like me moving here is going to fix all my problems single-handedly, like you might need to change some behaviors,
It's like you're running away from yourself in a way, because you're saying
can't do that.
My environment needs to change, but really what needs to change is what's inside, is the spiritual aspect. But yeah, I do want to say that because of course, traveling can be a really nice thing.
See the world.
And visiting new places and even moving can be a really great way to, sometimes for work purposes, as long as this is something that, I've been talking about with Jackie, is when we're talking about like where we should live, right? Like, do we want to live in Chicago, in the Chicagoland area, maybe around Lake Michigan?
Do we go to Cali?
Right. Do we look at maybe a lower cost of living place, which is not California, but
don't look at California for that.
but when we make these decisions, it's not, okay, well, where do our employers want us to move? No. That's already like the wrong frame, like mindset. It's, where do we see ourselves living as a family? Because ultimately what we prioritize first is our lives, right? Like the fact that we're a married couple and we want to start a family and all these things. But the work, you're just an Excel number in a spreadsheet.
They will backfill your position.
They will backfill you. Yeah. They're
like, if you die, like an all company email will go out and like the position will be up in like a week.
That. Yeah.
There will be an email. Come on, there's some good people in HR, but like,
I actually just heard a story of someone who said that they were in that position and then the company was like, actually, we're not going to send an email because it's going to lower productivity. So that's where we're at.
Like, we're down bad.
We are down bad.
We're down horrendous.
Yeah, but I think thinking about these big life decisions in context is what's important. It's saying, it's not like this thing of moving is always good or always bad. It's an and, like you said, it's part of a factor in overall happiness and well-being, but you have to first come to terms with, all right, well, do I have a good outlook on life? Like, am I in a good place, either financially or spiritually or whatever, like to say, I'm going to undertake this adventure and I know what it's going to come with. I know the cons, because it's not all pros. There's gonna always be, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So are you going into it consciously or not? Right. And I think going back to what you said, right? Like, you came back and you've seen yourself kind of be reintegrated. What's that dynamic been like with your family, especially when Marcus is still,
well, now I'm the favorite child. I'm the child at home.
Now you're the favorite child.
Yeah, it's like Mother's Day, like holidays that aren't like Christmas or Thanksgiving. Like my sister's in Philly and like Marcus is in DC, so it's like I'm the representation. So like, oh, Malcolm's here. I'm like, yeah, I am. Like,
do they reach out to you through text to like do favors for them or like Venmo you,
like
get
reset all their passwords? Like, please, like help me, like with
no,
my computer.
Your siblings.
Oh, I'm like, oh yeah, there was a point like when I first moved back, I was just like, oh, I'm just happy to be back. Like, don't worry, I'll get all the gifts. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna need some money.
Right.
Like, you're gonna need to send me some cash for this. And like one thing like, we did too this year, like we were able to take like both of our parents on a vacation. And that was like so cool. Like we took our mom to Vegas and we saw Bruno Mars, and then Jackie and Dad went to San Francisco for like the San Francisco Lions, like one of the big games in the NFL. I think it was like a semifinal or something. I don't know, but they went, and my dad's a big Lions fan, and like, we're just able to like give them like experiences, and now I'm like, oh, that's like low key like the vibe in the moment, like getting to like experience like new things with your parents, because as comforting as it is, to like just be like, oh, I can just like go home and like just kind of like lounge around like the house I grew up in. Like your parents are getting older too, and it's like I want to do new things, with them and like try new stuff and just like like switch it up. So that was like a really cool thing to do, and now I'm like, oh, I want to do that like more often. Like try to like do new experiences with my parents and like other family members too. Like my grandparents, like my aunts and uncles. Like let's do something,
Yeah, and talk to them while you still have them, especially grandparents.
Yeah, like what's tea? Like tell me about your life. Like I'm 28. Like what was tea when you were 28? Like what was going on?
And have you found that transition from, of course, being the Malcolm that they have known since you were a baby to now being the 28-year-old Malcolm?
It's difficult because like I like didn't do like the best, like keeping up with them like in college and like in California. And so like even like when Jackie came over to my grandparents and my aunt's house, and they were like, "Oh my goodness, like why do we feel like we've never met you?" I was like, "I've literally known Jackie like for like since I was like 8 years old." And I was like, "Oh, like I haven't done a super good job of like bringing them along, like in my life and like like my friends and just like kind of keeping them like updated." So then like the result of that is like the memories they have are like me when I was like 5, like and like fell off the swing set, and I'm like, I don't remember that because like I was 5. So it's like, oh, we should like make like new memories. And like you have to do that on purpose. I think something I've realized, it doesn't just like happen. You have to like be intentional with your family. I think sometimes like I'm very intentional with my friends. I'm like, yeah, like what am I gonna do with the girlies this weekend? But like I need to be intentional with my family too, and like I feel like going on like those vacations with my parents, I was like, oh, like there are memories to be made, there are experiences to be had like with my family outside, like just getting together at someone's house, which is like amazing, but like we should put some intentionality behind that too.
I love that these memories don't just happen on accident.
They don't just happen.
That you have to actually play not only a role, but an active role in getting these things organized, because as you said, they're older, they don't have as much energy, they don't have maybe the ideas that...
And they're probably scared to bother my like busy life. Like, oh, Malcolm's so busy in Chicago. Like, I'm low-key chilling. Like I work from home. Like I play tennis. Like I'm chilling. But like in their mind, they're like, oh, like I don't want to probably like interrupt his young, busy life. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to feel like that. Like, let's go do something,
Yeah. Jackie's mom actually says, I should say my mother-in-law says that, where she says, oh, like Jackie, or this is my daughter, Jackie, she's coming in from out of town. And then the people that she's talking with at the store will say like, oh, like, where are you coming in from, like New York or something? And then Jackie's like, no, I'm coming in from Chicago. And then they're like, oh, I thought you said out of town. And then, well, it's like a big thing because, like you said, when we think about the weekends, we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna go hang out with a friend. Yeah,
what's the move?
All right, yeah. Like it's time. Where we're meeting up or going to Lottie's, all these things, right? But at the same time, it's the weekend for our parents too. So
it's their weekend too. They're like, what's the move?
Yeah, what can we do to be there for them and come up with ideas and make those new memories, because especially as they get older, we're gonna cherish those things more and more. What's been the dynamic within even the household, especially as I think you mentioned your dad's been a lot busier with obligations within the family and stuff. Has that taken a toll even on you, where you've had to step up in other ways to kind of backfill maybe some of the responsibilities that he had?
Yeah, I mean, like, her grandma is, like, she's doing well, but she's like 98, so it's just like, you want to make sure you're like really active and like present, because it's like, if I fall, like, I can get back up, like, if she falls, it's like, whoa, we need to like make sure everything's good. And then also one of my aunts in Virginia is not doing so well. So he's kind of like taken on kind of like the worldwide, nationwide like caretaker role, like going to Detroit, like making sure Oma's good, like going to Virginia, making sure like, my auntie's good. And that's like travel, and that's like a lot of time. And he's traveling for work too. So I was kind of like, you're like traveling a lot, when you just like make sure you're like taking care of yourself. But like trying to tell like your dad like, oh, I'm good. And I'm like, all right, hey, I'm just telling you, like, you have a lot on your plate. And like I've even offered him, like, is there anything I can do? Like, can I come to Virginia to help, like, clean up the house? Like, my aunt has a house in Atlanta. I'm like, do you need help with that? Like, like going through like someone's house. They haven't been in a house in Atlanta in like 15 years, and they're probably gonna like put it on the market soon. So I'm like, do you need help with that? And it's kind of like, oh, like I got it. And I'm kind of probably just gonna like have to bully my way into it and be like, I bought the ticket, like I'm coming with you, because it's like, I know from this point of view, he probably doesn't want to like put like burden on me, but I'm like, okay, like, it's my family too, and I don't want to just kind of like watch you like bust your ass to like take care of them, and I'm just like, yeah, go on, like go do it. So I'm probably gonna have to bully my way into it though, because like
What have you found successful in either bullying your way into it or just forming those relationships where maybe your parents are saying, don't be bothered by this?
Yeah, it's like, oh, I don't need help. I don't need help. I'm like, I'm going, like, let's figure this out. Let me help you. Like, even like with like tech stuff, because like, oh my God, no one can remember a password to like save their life. So Marcus is really more of the password child, but he's also like in DC. So I'm like the live IT tech support. I'm just like, all right, make a password that you're going to remember. Like, please, for the love of God. So, just trying to help him with that. And just like, like physical things around the house. Like, my parents, like, they're in great health. They're moving and grooving. Like, mom's still doing like 5Ks. But like, like if there's something heavy at the front door and it's like, we don't need to move it right now. And then I come home, I'm like, where do you guys need this? Like, let me
lift with your feet.
Let me put it somewhere. Like, where do you need it? So just trying to, again, like be conscious and be aware, because part of me is like, I go home, I'm like, oh, like I'm home, I can just turn my brain off, like, oh, I can just like relax. I'm also like, all right, like, you gotta be active, like you gotta help the parents out. Like, what do you guys need? Because they need help and they might not always ask for it.
Do you see them staying in Bolingbrook for the let's say next 5 years?
I think so. I was like, whatever you do, don't sell that house. Like, if you try, don't sell that house. Like, whatever you do,
put that in a trust.
Put it in the trust. Please don't put it in my name. Please. I don't want taxes.
Right.
But yeah, like, don't sell the house. But I think they are pretty rooted. Like, they're both really now, like, because like they're empty nesters. I mean, they've been empty nesters for a while, but like they've gotten back active in their sororities and fraternities, and like it's been nice to see them like do stuff for themselves. Like, my mom like going to like a sorority conference, like my dad like having the guys over. It's like, I didn't see that when I was a kid, and now I'm like, oh, because like they're taking care of my ass. Like, my mom couldn't go to a week-long sorority conference because like I had soccer games. I had to be taken to school and like be fed. My dad couldn't go because he had to coach like on the weekend. So I was like, why didn't I see them like interacting with their friends like so much like they are now? And I was like, oh, duh, because like.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's a common thing for the other friends that they have, where they're also in a similar state of life.
Yeah, they all have like kids like around the same age, and like like family friends, that type of thing. So now they all just get to do their own thing. I'm like, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and they did their thing, right? You guys were Family of the Year. Please remind me.
2013, 2014.
You guys are Family of the Year in Bolingbrook, and so yeah, they've done a lot of good things, not just within the family unit, but as we mentioned earlier, from even what your dad did within the in-house soccer, a lot of community efforts, and they've done a lot to be a real active presence. And
now just like and I enjoy it. Enjoy like what you built and like the relationships you have. And they actually just got back from Cancun, like 35-year wedding anniversary.
Wow, that's awesome.
Was this Memorial Day? I was like, dang, 35 years. That's like. I was like, wow, that's longer than I've been alive. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, oh, my God, that's so long.
Well, the math is mathing. So.
I was like, oh, I guess I can see that. But no, so I'm glad they were able to, like, take a vacation. I think like my dad's been traveling, but not necessarily for, like, enjoyment. So it was nice to see him, like, get a vacation.
So I know we are unfortunately wrapping up on time. So the last thing I'll ask you, something with hopefully a lot of shots in it, will be the UCL final, the Champions League final.
It's going to be tight. It's not going to be a goal fest.
What's your prediction?
Dortmund will score. Madrid will win 2-1.
Any predictions on who?
On who's scoring? I mean, Rodrigo's been on fire. He'll probably put one away. I would love to see a Jadon Sancho goal. Like, I feel like that would just be like great for his like arc. You know, like he was on loan and he was like tossed away, you know, by England, and now he's in Champions League final.
Mhm.
I'd love to see him get a goal. I don't think Dortmund are going to win, but honestly, they have no reason to believe they can't win. Like, they're in the final.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the final. Why not, you know, try to win?
From the group of death, they had a very hard road.
They had a very hard road. So, like, they should believe that they can win. By Madrid, they're just Madrid. Like,
we saw what happened with City.
Oh, I won't talk about it.
We saw what happened with Bayern.
That City game was just, I mean, like, they just won fair and square. It's like, I wanted to, like, be mad. I wanted to say the rest were trash. But I was just like, no, they just, like, won the soccer game.
The weight of their jersey showed itself.
Like, I will be wearing my Vinny Jr. jersey on Saturday. Like, I'm going to have to, like, put it over my City jersey. Because I'm an independent Vinny Jr. fan. Like, I love him. I love the way he plays.
Is Vinny...
Madrid, like, they're a cool club. Like, I really, really like Vinny Jr.
Is Vinny a Brazilian dancer? He is, right? Like
I mean, he's always the one.
Is
like,
he part of the Paquetá dancing?
Yeah, he'll join. He'll start the party, and I love his like directness. You know, like, I feel like a lot of the modern wingers are kind of like get the ball and then, like, you know, pass it back, which is great for possession. But he's just like, I'm taking your ass. I'm taking your ass on. Like, let's go 1v1. Let's go. And I'm like, I like that. I like that.
And Real Madrid scouted him. They knew and invested in him. I mean, he was
because he was just kind of like a rando.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they stuck it out, and you know, he's improved a lot. And I guess one final shout out, an area that you've improved a lot in, tennis. If anyone is looking to play tennis, get a piece of this man's backhand.
2 hands.
This man will play you, especially around the Chicagoland area.
Yeah, let's go. Let's play. Let's ride.
Excellent job at, you know, showing improvement. And yeah, this was a wonderful conversation. I love you, brother. This was so much fun, and I hope all of you enjoyed our conversation.
This was great.
And we'll tune in for the next episode of Across the Decades. Time flies.
See y'all later.
Ciao.